We're going to look at solving basic linear equations that are in this form. Learn to recognise the x term and the number. And it's crucial you can solve these equations because they're just so common, and even more complicated equations often end up in this form. The good news is they're not too difficult. Look at the number on its own and do the opposite of this on both sides. Then look at the number that's in front of the x, which is 2, and divide both sides by this. All being well, this will cancel. Just leave you with the answer. Can I make it more difficult? Well, not much. This looks more complicated because of the minus signs. But the method's no different. Look at the number and do the opposite to both sides. And then look at the number that's in front of the x term and divide both sides by this. All being well, this should cancel, which it does. And a minus divided by a minus is a plus. So there's our answer. Maybe I'll put a few extra terms in. Just make life easy for yourself. Whenever you see an equation like this, always collect like terms before you even begin to solve the equation. So I'll collect the x's together here on the left, and I can sum the numbers together on the right. And now again I've got an equation that we've been looking at. Look at the number on the end and do the opposite to both sides. Then I look at the number in front of the x and divide both sides by this number. All being well, that cancels. And 0 divided by 2 is just 0. Maybe I can catch you out with this equation. I've put it in the wrong order, but it still has a number and still has an x term, so the method's no different. I look at the number and do the opposite to both sides. Then look at the number in front of the x term and divide both sides by this. All being well, this will cancel. 10 divided by 2 is 5, and a minus divided by a minus is a plus, so there's our answer. What would you do here? Well, it's a different way around to what we're used to seeing, but again, still has an x term, still has a number, so the method's the same. We see we've got a plus 4 here, so we'll do the opposite to both sides. Then I look at the number that's in front of the x, which is plus 2, and divide both sides by that number. Again, all being well, this will simplify, which it does. And so there's my answer. Perhaps this would throw you. Instead of an x, I've used a different letter of the alphabet, but it's no different. I look at the number and do the opposite to both sides. And then I look at the number that's in front of, this time, the a, which is plus 6, so I'll divide both sides by plus 6. That cancels as I'd hoped, and I'm left with my answer. Finally, I'll make it more difficult by giving you 2 questions in one. Before you can start, you've got to expand these brackets, and I'm assuming that you're okay with that. And just by doing that, I've got an equation now that we're used to. I look at the number and do the opposite to both sides. Then I look at the number in front of the x, plus 2, so I do this to both sides. Divide both sides by plus 2. All being well, that will cancel, which it does, and I'm left with this. Now, don't be surprised if you do end up with a fraction. And this is correct, but it is a top-heavy fraction, so I'll write it as a mixed number. And we're done. Notice that I've always carefully paid attention to the signs when I've been carrying out this method. Here's some questions for you to do, and you can always check your answers by substituting your answer back into the original equation and seeing that the left-hand side is equal to the right-hand side.